or at least immobilization. If positioned in Kaliningrad, Iskander launchers could threaten a wide array of military and political targets across NATO. Consequently, we can expect that NATO would target mobile Iskander launchers in the first stage of any conflict. As the history of tracking and destroying mobile missile launchers has been sketchy at best, however, NATO would have to be wary of SRBM attacks deep into the war. And successful attacks against the Iskander launchers depend on the achievement of air superiority over the theater of operations. Designed as the USSR's answer to the F-15, the first flankers entered service in 1985, but production troubles kept their numbers low until the early 1990s. At that point, the collapse of the Soviet Union significantly reduced the overall production run. The aircraft of the flanker family combine size, range, speed, and wicked maneuverability into a single deadly platform. With gaunt, unforgiving lines, the flanker is not a beautiful plane, but its appearance does suggest danger. The Russian Air Force continues to operate several hundred flankers in various configurations. The basic flanker frame has proven remarkably flexible for upgrade, and has become the platform of choice for discerning fighter customers. Variants of the flanker include the Su-30 multi-role fighter, the Su-33 carrier-based fighter, the S-34 fighter bomber, the Su-35 air superiority fighter, and several Chinese knockoffs. The flanker has never met the most advanced Generation 4 and Generation 4.5 aircraft in combat, and it obviously has never engaged the F-22. Nevertheless, we can expect that it will give fits to pilots of Eagles, Vipers, and Typhoons, and may even cause problems for Raptors. The Russian Air Force has developed tactics for using flankers to fight stealth fighters that concentrate on taking advantage of the plane's remarkable maneuverability to survive the first missile attack. Moreover, the flanker is heavy and fast enough to hit hard and then retreat to safety before any NATO fighters can catch it. The entire Western way of war depends on the achievement of air supremacy. NATO forces have not fought against a modern, capable air defense system in a very long time. During that time, the cost of NATO fighter bombers has metastasized, making the loss of a single aircraft very nearly a national fiscal catastrophe. An S-400 battery has three kinds of missiles, each intended to engage aerial targets at different ranges. The longest-ranged SAM can engage at 400 kilometers, with shorter-ranged missiles compensating with enhanced capabilities for killing fast, maneuverable targets. The S-400 can also engage ballistic missiles, although it's unlikely that NATO would use such weapons. The sensor systems of the S-400 are thought to be extremely effective, especially as Russia can layer S-400 defense zones in nearly every conceivable theater of conflict. Positioning the S-400 at Kaliningrad could endanger NATO air operations deep into Europe. In combination with the Iskander and the flanker, these missiles would make the job of NATO air forces in the early days of a conflict very difficult, indeed. Russian sensor systems, ground and air, exceed the capabilities of any opponent that NATO countries have fought in the last 25 years. The SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense, mission against an integrated air defense network. Russia has a wide variety of shorter-range systems for point defense, would prove extremely treacherous. At least in the early days of the war, the S-400 and its associated systems could neutralize NATO air power, undermining one of the central pillars of the Western way of war. NATO forces developed an extremely capable anti-submarine system during the Cold War, including aircraft, attack submarines, stationary sensors, and surface ships. The collapse of the Soviet Union dramatically reduced the Russian submarine threat, with the eventual consequence of a reduction of NATO anti-submarine warfare (ASW) capabilities. While NATO forces, and especially US forces, have continued to pursue ASW, they no longer can draw upon the resources they enjoyed during the Cold War. And yet Russian submarines remain. In the 1980s and 1990s, the USSR and Russia built 15 Aquila, Shkuka-B class submarines, 9 of which remain in service. Extremely stealthy for Soviet subs of their period, the Russian Navy has upgraded the boats with the latest quieting technology. Perhaps most importantly, the Aquilas carry a massive array of weaponry, including torpedoes and cruise missiles. The cruise missiles can strike both sea and land targets, putting much of NATO's coastline at risk. The best NATO subs can still track and defeat the Aquilas, although the latter's high speed makes catching them an iffy proposition. But even if NATO can sink the Russian subs, they can still wreak an enormous amount of havoc before they submerge for good. This could mean killing a carrier, or simply causing enormous, unexpected damage to critical infrastructure ashore. In 5 years, as Russian diesel-electric technology continues to develop, the Lada class may replace the Aquilas, at least in context of the narrow contours of a NATO-Russian conflict. For now, however, the enduring stealth and massive armament of the Aquilas continues to present a threat, not only to NATO shipping, but also to NATO land installations. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union conceived of Special Operations Forces primarily in terms of support of conventional operations. Even at the time, however, the Soviets interpreted this mission more broadly than NATO. Spetsnaz, an umbrella term that has come to encompass special forces operators under several organizational designations, were expected to undertake offensive operations concentrating on the sabotage of communications, the preparation for conventional advance, and even the wreaking of political havoc. As with all other elements of the Russian military, the special forces deteriorated